She claimed HOA rules gave her access to my pool. She was wrong, and the proof ended everything. I knew something was wrong the moment I turned onto my street. Cars were parked in front of my house that I didn't recognize, lined up in a way that immediately felt off. At first, I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe neighbors had guests. Maybe someone parked wrong. But as I stepped out of my car, I heard loud laughter, splashing water, music drifting from my backyard. My backyard. I walked faster, keys still in my hand, my mind trying to catch up with what my ears were already telling me. When I pushed open the gate and saw my pool, my chest tightened. There were people in it. Not one or two. A group. Kids jumping in without hesitation. Adults lounging in the water like it was a resort. Towels were draped over my pool chairs. Shoes were kicked off on my deck. Drinks sat on the side of the pool, already sweating in the sun. For a few seconds, I just stood there, frozen. No one noticed me. No one stopped. No one asked who I was. That was the part that hit hardest, how comfortable they were. How natural it seemed for them to be there. Like my home was just another place they were entitled to use. I scanned the faces, hoping maybe I'd recognize someone. A neighbor. A friend of a friend. Anyone who could explain why this was happening. But every face was unfamiliar. Complete strangers. Laughing and talking over one another. Completely at ease in a space I had worked hard to make my own. I felt a mix of confusion and disbelief turn into anger. This wasn't a misunderstanding. I took a deep breath before saying anything, reminding myself to stay calm. Storming and angry would only make things worse. And I still hoped there was some reasonable explanation. I stepped closer to the pool and cleared my throat, trying to get someone else's attention. A few heads turned. The laughter faded just a little. I asked, as politely as I could, what was going on and why there were so many people in my backyard. That's when she stepped forward. She didn't look surprised to see me. In fact, she looked annoyed, like I had interrupted something important. Her posture was rigid, her arms crossed tightly across her chest, her lips pressed into a thin line. She looked me up and down before speaking. And when she did, her tone was sharp and condescending, as if she were explaining something obvious to a child. She said the pool was basically community property. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. I asked her to repeat that, and she did, louder this time, making sure everyone around could hear. She claimed the HOA rules allowed residents to use amenities freely and invite guests. She spoke with absolute confidence, like the matter was already settled and I was foolish for questioning it. I told her, calmly but firmly, that this was my private pool, on my property, not a shared facility. I explained that there was no rule, HOA or otherwise, that gave her or anyone else the right to use it without my permission. As soon as I said that, her expression hardened. She took a step closer, pointing her finger directly at me. She accused me of being selfish, said I was making a scene, claimed everyone else was fine with it and that I was the only one causing a problem. Her voice grew louder with every sentence, drawing more attention from the people in the pool and those lounging nearby. Conversation stopped. Kids went quiet. All eyes were on us. She started quoting HOA rules, or at least what she thought were HOA rules. She talked about shared spaces, neighborhood harmony, and community rights, mixing real terms with things that clearly didn't apply. It was obvious she either didn't understand the rules or was deliberately twisting them to suit her. When I pointed out that her interpretation was wrong, she laughed dismissively and said she'd been on the board long enough to know how things work. That was the moment it became clear this wasn't about confusion or a simple mistake. This was entitlement. She genuinely believed her position, real or imagined, put her above everyone else. She believed she had the authority to decide what belonged to whom. I could feel the tension rising, not just between us, but across the entire backyard. People shifted uncomfortably. Some avoided eye contact. Others watched closely, clearly entertained by the confrontation. And standing there, being talked down to in my own home, I realized something important. Arguing with her wasn't going to fix anything. Instead of things calming down after that confrontation, they spiraled in the opposite direction. What should have been the end of it somehow became an open invitation for things to get worse. Over the next few days, the activity around my pool didn't slow down, it multiplied. Each time I came home, there were more unfamiliar cars, more voices, more people acting like my backyard was a public hangout spot. The next gathering was bigger than the last. Music played louder, echoing through the neighborhood. Coolers appeared by the fence, filled with drinks that weren't mine. Kids ran across my deck without a second thought, dripping water everywhere, leaving puddles that I later had to clean up. Someone brought inflatable floats and tossed them into the pool like they owned the place. Another person moved my patio furniture to make room for more chairs, never bothering to put anything back. What shocked me most was how normal it all seemed to them. They laughed, took photos, and talked about future get-togethers as if this was now a regular arrangement. I overheard someone say they couldn't wait to come back next weekend. Another joked about how nice it is when you don't have to host. Each comment felt like a small slap in the face. I tried to speak up again, but my words were drowned out by noise and indifference. When I asked people to be careful or questioned why they were there, I was met with shrugging shoulders and vague gestures toward her, as if she had given them permission and that was all that mattered. She stood nearby, arms folded, watching the chaos unfold with a satisfied expression. Like this was proof that she won. The mess kept growing. Empty cups were left on the ground. Food wrappers blew across the yard. Someone spilled a drink near the pool equipment, and no one bothered to clean it up. I found myself worrying about things I shouldn't have had to safety. Damage, liability. If someone slipped, if a child got hurt, if something broke, it would all fall on me. As the crowd grew, so did the sense of being pushed out of my own space. I stayed near the edge of the yard, feeling like an outsider looking in. Every laugh felt louder. Every splash felt more aggressive. The pool, once a place I used to relax, had become a source of stress and frustration. That's when it finally clicked. This wasn't just rude behavior or a lack of respect. It was deliberate. By letting the situation explode into chaos, she was testing how far she could go, how much she could take before I broke. And standing there, surrounded by noise, trash, and strangers, I realized something important. If I kept reacting emotionally, I'd lose. That night, when the backyard finally went quiet and the last unfamiliar car pulled away, I didn't feel relief. I felt clarity. I sat at my kitchen table long after dark, replaying everything that had happened. Not with anger this time, but with focus. Arguing had got me nowhere. Confrontation had only fueled the situation. If I wanted this to end, I needed to stop reacting and start thinking. I pulled out every document I had related to my home. Property records, purchase agreements, HOA bylaws I hadn't looked at in years. I read them carefully, line by line, highlighting anything that mentioned private property, shared amenities, and guest access. The more I read, the clearer things became. My pool wasn't in a gray area. It wasn't a shared resource. It was unquestionably mine. I started documenting everything. Dates, times, the number of people, the noise, the mess left behind. I wrote it all down while it was still fresh in my memory. I gathered photos of the condition my yard was left in after each gathering, careful to capture what was moved, what was damaged, and what was simply abandoned. This wasn't about being petty. It was about building a record that couldn't be dismissed. I thought about liability next. If someone slipped, got hurt, or worse, I'd be the one facing the consequences. That realization hardened my resolve. I took steps to protect myself, setting up cameras that covered the pool area and the entrances to my yard. Not to spy, but to have an objective account of what was happening when I wasn't home. Something factual, something undeniable. As I worked, I felt strangely calm. The chaos of the past few days faded into the background, replaced by a sense of control I hadn't felt since this all began. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't looking to embarrass anyone. I simply wanted the behavior to stop. And I wanted it to stop the right way. I double-checked local regulations and trespassing laws, making sure I understood where my rights began and ended. Knowledge felt like armor. Every page I read, every note I took, reinforced the same truth. I didn't need to raise my voice to be heard. I needed to be prepared. By the time I finished, the plan was simple. I wouldn't warn her again. I wouldn't argue. I would let her do exactly what she'd been doing, confident and unchecked, while I quietly gathered what I needed. And when the moment came, the facts would speak for themselves. For the first time since this started, I slept well. The next gathering happened just like I knew it would. Same pattern, same confidence, same sense of entitlement. Cars lined the street again. Music echoed through the neighborhood. Laughter carried over the fence. From the outside, it probably looked like just another carefree pool party. But this time, I wasn't standing on the sidelines feeling helpless. This time, I was ready. I didn't confront anyone when I arrived. I didn't argue. I didn't even step into the backyard right away. I stayed calm and made one phone call. Then I waited. When officials arrived, the energy shifted instantly. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Smiles faded. People looked around, confused and uneasy, trying to understand why authority figures was suddenly present. She stepped forward like she always did, clearly expecting to take control of the situation. But for the first time, her confidence wavered. The rules were read out loud. Property lines were explained clearly. The distinction between private ownership and shared amenities was made impossible to ignore. Documentation was reviewed. Dates, photos, footage, everything I had quietly prepared was laid out in front of everyone. There was no room for interpretation, no way to twist the facts. You could see the realization spread across her face. This wasn't a misunderstanding she could talk her way out of. This wasn't a situation where raising her voice would help. The authority she thought she had simply wasn't there. And the people she had invited, the same ones who had treated my home like a free vacation spot, suddenly wanted nothing to do with the situation. Some stepped back. Others avoided eye contact. A few quietly gathered their things. The mood turned heavy. What had started as another loud, careless party ended in awkward silence. She tried to protest, to claim she was misled, that she believed she had the right. But the answers were firm and final. Permission had never been given. Boundaries had been crossed. Consequences were now unavoidable. One by one, people left. Towels were picked up. Chairs were moved back. The pool emptied. And with each car that drove away, I felt the tension drain from my chest. Not because I won, but because the truth had finally been acknowledged. She didn't look at me as she left. There was no apology, no dramatic outburst, just quiet embarrassment. And honestly, that was enough. That night, my backyard was silent again. The pool lights reflected peacefully on the water, just like they used to. Standing there, I felt something I hadn't felt since this all began: relief. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't stooped to her level. I simply protected what was mine. And that's when I understood the real lesson. Entitlement only works when no one pushes back the right way. Facts, patience, and preparation will always outlast noise and arrogance. The next gathering unfolded exactly as I expected, almost as if nothing had changed. Cars lined the street again. Music drifted over the fence, and laughter echoed through the backyard. From the outside, it looked like another carefree pool party. Inside, though, everything was different. I wasn't angry. I wasn't anxious. I was calm. Because this time I wasn't reacting, I was executing what I had already prepared. I didn't walk out and confront anyone. I didn't raise my voice or demand explanations. I let the scene play out naturally, just long enough for it to be clear what was happening. Then I made the call I'd planned for days. After that, I waited. When the officials arrived, the atmosphere shifted instantly. The noise died down. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, and people began looking around, confused and uneasy. The easy confidence that had filled my backyard moments earlier vanished. She stepped forward like she always did, clearly ready to take control and explain everything away. But this time, the script didn't work. The situation was laid out calmly and clearly. Property boundaries were explained. The difference between private ownership and shared HOA spaces was stated in simple terms. The documents I had collected were reviewed, one by one. Dates, photos, footage, everything lined up perfectly, leaving no room for interpretation or argument. This wasn't tea about opinions anymore. It was about facts. I watched the realization settle in. Her posture stiffened. Her expression changed. The authority she thought she had wasn't tea recognized. Because it had never existed in the first place. The people she de-invited started to distance themselves, suddenly uncomfortable being associated with the situation. Some quietly gathered their belongings. Others avoided eye contact, pretending they had nothing to do with what was happening. The party unraveled quickly after that. Music was turned off. Kids were pulled out of the pool. Towels were folded in a rush. Chairs were dragged back to where they belonged. One by one, people left. The sound of car doors closing replacing the laughter that had filled the air earlier. She tried to explain herself, to insist it was a misunderstanding, that she genuinely believed she was allowed to do what she'd done. But belief didn't matter anymore. The rules were clear, the boundaries were clear, and the consequences were unavoidable. There was nothing left to argue. When the last guest left and the street returned to normal, the backyard felt different. Quiet, still. The pool water reflected the evening light just like it used to. Untouched and peaceful. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't expected. She never apologized. She didn't need to. The embarrassment, the sudden loss of confidence, and the public realization that she had overstepped were enough. The gathering stopped after that. No more strangers. No more noise. No more entitlement. What stayed with me most wasn't satisfaction or victory, but relief. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't escalated things emotionally. I had protected my home by staying patient, informed, and prepared. And in the end, that made all the difference. If you like seeing boundaries respected and entitlement shut down, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story.